the hawksbill sea turtles, well, I've been aware of the decline of sea turtles. They're declining globally. And the hawksbills are the most critically endangered sea turtle on the planet. And it's kind of crazy. They've been around for 100 million years, but just in the last 2 centuries, their population has plummeted by 90% due to human activity. So in Hawaii, where my book is set on the Big Island, for example, there's only they're thinking about 25 egg-laying females in the Hawaiian chain. And they lay on the Big Island and they lay eggs on Molokai. And so that's really so it's very small, right? And the hawksbills tend to stay, the Hawaiian hawksbills, inside that island chain. Other hawksbills can have epic journeys, and there's bigger populations, for example, on the Australian Great Barrier Reef. But for Hawaii, it's a pretty small little population. So I really wanted to focus on that. I was on the Big Island and just was enchanted with seeing sea turtles and just seeing all of the obstacles they're up against. I really wanted to set a book there and spread information about the plight that these species are facing. And hawksbills been hit particularly bad because of this thing called the Beko trade, which was the tortoiseshell trade. Back in the 30s and 40s and earlier, everything with tortoiseshell, right? Tortoiseshell glasses and combs and dishes, and all of that came from the shell of these hawksbill sea turtles. And it just absolutely decimated their population, even more so than it had already been harmed. But even today, the Beko trade has been outlawed in most places, though it still goes on. But other factors injure the turtles. For example, the fishing industry. Turtles will get caught in nets and drown, or they can get crushed in dredging operations where they're looking for shellfish. They even can get crushed when they're dredging new channels for ship navigation. And they even can get sucked up by power plants like nuclear power plants that use seawater to cool their reactors. They can get sucked up in those. And then there's these things called long lines, which are a huge problem. They're many, many miles long. These thin monofilament lines baited with thousands of hooks, and turtles get trapped in those. And even if a fisherman can manage to free them, they often die later from the wounds. And there's some estimates that half of some sea turtle populations can get caught in these long lines per year. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Um, and then one of the biggest threats to sea turtles, and you see this on resort communities on the ocean, are these huge housing developments and beach resorts that have these lights on all the time, or there's flood mitigation measures that have these giant seawalls that prevent the turtles from coming to shore to lay their eggs. And then climate change is also a threat because it's eroding beaches. It inundates their nests and drowns hatchlings. And then there's plastic pollution, of course, which is a huge problem. Sea turtles ingest a lot of the plastic in our oceans. And so there's so many threats that face them. I really felt strongly about setting a book there. It's interesting because, normally you're so right. When we think of hurricanes, we're thinking of the Atlantic and the eastern seaboard of the U.S., but there are the Pacific hurricanes, that can hit Baja or Hawaii. So they come in, and in this case on the Big Island, they'll come in on the eastern shore and hit that. So, and then you have to think about the infrastructure, like how developed is the infrastructure to deal with these disasters. And of course, just like on the eastern seaboard of the U.S., Hawaiians have to deal with, rebuilding their homes and businesses and flood damage and storm surge damage and high winds and just all of the insane weather. And these hurricanes worldwide are becoming more and more frequent because of climate change and more powerful because of the sea surface temperatures heating up. And that makes these hurricanes be able to pick up a lot more speed and water content and really ravage the coasts. Normally she's by herself. She was by herself in the first book, the Wolverine book, and then in the polar bear book, she's with mainly a grad student and a helicopter pilot. Third book, again, she's totally alone, and same with the fourth book. So this was something a little different that I wanted to do, where she would arrive to a place and it was a different kind of research because normally in the previous books, she's on the move. She's tracking polar bears by helicopter or trekking across the desert trying to find jaguars. So this was kind of cool because she's on a single beach where these hawksbill sea turtles have been laying their eggs. And because they require round the clock watching, because poachers will come by, dogs will dig them up and eat them. There's all kinds of predators that want to get at eggs and baby turtles. So she really needs someone there all the time. So she does a volunteer call out and she's camped on the beach. So most of the time she's there and she's tagged some turtles with GPS trackers so she can see how they're moving in and out of the coral reefs. They eat sponges, hawksbill sea turtles, which is a really cool little niche that they occupy. So they're just right off the beach. But the times when she needs to go get groceries or resupply, she needs someone there to watch the turtles. And she also wants help on the night they hatch because they all need a little escort down the beach so they can make it safely into the waves. So she does this volunteer call out, and I really enjoyed just seeing who would show up. I was sort of surprised myself. There's a paleontologist who shows up, a Native Hawaiian, and to volunteer. And there's a Samoan dad and his daughter who own a restaurant in the nearest town, and they show up. And there's an elementary school teacher named Dora McNora who's retired and she just loves turtles and just wants to help. And then I've got a teenage kid named Jerome who's actually from Detroit, but he's on the Big Island visiting his aunt, and so he helps out. So it was a real mix of volunteers, and I had fun writing their exchanges, and some knew a lot about turtles, some didn't so much. So it was a really cool dynamic, fun to write. That was one of the biggest challenges because normally she is by herself. She can think about these measures being done to help wildlife, or, oh, I need to collar this animal and do the specifics of the dosage of tranquilizer or what have you. But with a group, I had to put all of these science facts into conversations and had to make them sound conversational and make the characters engaged and interested in learning more. But at the same time, I didn't want Alex to be this like lecturing. Now, this is what we do. I wanted it to be this collective experience for the volunteers. So there was a lot of writing and rewriting, and they're sitting around the nest at night just sort of chit-chatting about their different backgrounds and bringing up, seeding in little turtle facts as I went. In the previous books, the villains did have direct things to do with the species involved. And in this book, I wanted to, again, do something a little different. So without giving any spoilers, the evil plan of these people doesn't have to do with the turtles. It has to do with something else on the island. And they need this one of her volunteers to accomplish it. So she's herself like not understanding who are these people? Why did they take one of my volunteers? And what am I going to do? And of course, with the hurricane moving in, the town's evacuated. So it's really up to Alex to figure out, oh my gosh, my volunteer was taken. I have to help this person and uncover their nefarious plot. It's a small museum, a paleontology museum, but I was absolutely inspired by the American Museum of Natural History in New York. I love that place. I have wandered for hours in that place, and some of the fossils that really struck me when I was in New York, I put into the book. For example, there's the Andrewsarchus, which was basically this giant terrestrial land whale descendant, this one of the largest mammalian terrestrial predators that ever lived. It had a 3-foot skull, so I had to put that in the book. And I love paleontology. I almost was a paleontology major, so I put in other fossils that I've seen and inspired by other museums. There's a cool one in Thermopolis that I've in Wyoming, and so I put that Archaeopteryx fossil they have there into the book. And so that was neat to just pull from all of these different museums I'd visited and create my own little museum. She knows martial arts and she can fix engines in her own car and just stuff like that. She's very resourceful, sort of MacGyver-esque. She uses what's at hand to whatever she can use as a tool or a weapon. And I don't know. I can get in that mode myself just as I'm writing. I'm, imagining that I'm Alex and what I would do and what's at hand and kind of just going through the same sorts of thoughts that she would be having. And those are my favorite parts to write. They just fly by because I really get in this vibe of, okay, what can I do? And oftentimes I don't really plot those out in detail, so that there's some surprise. So I'm, oh, she could use this and that, and then she does this, and it's pretty exciting for me. I probably look like a dork while I'm writing it, but I just have fun. I want to keep on with her as long as I can. I have so many species I want to discuss and settings to use. So yeah, that's one challenge of the series, right? Is the protagonist is gonna live. So, um, but how wounded can she be? And I do think about that. Like, I don't want her to be so wounded at some point that her field work in the future is compromised. At the same time, it would be unrealistic if she went through these ordeals she goes through and nothing happens. So she's been shot in a couple of the books and had falls and myriad scrapes and cuts and really went through the ringer in The Vanishing Kind. But so yeah, I do want to keep going, and so she lives.